Okay, the stream is on, so that make sure it's on early. So it works.
One or two spectators.
My hope is that the council will take it up over the next year as a piece of information.
Yeah. So I've been teaching from my dining room. That's my classroom right now, my dining room table.
Your piece
Yep.
first and then I'll.
And I gotta say, I dig it a little.
I can summarize, you know, yes, and go in more details.
What's that? Oh my, I tell the I told the students, I said, this will be one for the ages.
You think it's okay?
This will be part of your memories.
Because that's, I think it's part of here, with this.
That's right.
Do something like that.
Take the precautions, you know? I mean, we know the precautions work. Take the precautions. Yeah.
If anybody's out there, or anybody wants to look at it after, I want to. Okay.
Right?
All right, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee on November 19th, 2020. We'll start with a roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Here.
Counselor Moore,
Here.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Counselor Barbell,
Here.
Counselor Gibbs,
Here.
Counselor Brody,
Here.
Okay, for tonight's meeting, we're going to have Counselor Barbell give us a presentation. But first, I'd like to move these agenda items 1, 2, and 3 to the regular agenda. May I have a motion to do that? Moved by Counselor Moore, seconded by Counselor Kelly. Okay.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Reed,
Yes. Okay. Having done that, we'll just turn it over to Counselor Barbell.
Dean? Dean?
I'd like to move up so I can be on a microphone. I think speaking from here, it's hard for anybody on the video. Do you hear it?
Yeah.
Thanks.
You have copies to pass out? Yes, gotcha. Okay.
Too many pieces of paper. Well, I want to thank Mike for giving me a little bit of time to share some of the information that I gathered over the last 2-3 months, working with both the Chief Levi Ritter on the police department and less intensive with Chief Lawless at the fire department. I really didn't have the time to actually go into a lot of detail of the work of the fire department. And I would hope at some point I might learn more about what they're doing. The document that I'm going to share with you is online, is posted online already, and I believe both the chiefs have the document, and Chris, I sent him the document as well. So it's what it is my take on the staffing, and it's hopefully one point of view for both the mayor and the council, that this report will serve as a vehicle to move discussion of the police department to a more factual analysis of its role as an essential service. We've had a number of people before the council over the last few weeks and months expressing concern about any reduction of funding in the police department, and essentially using the term defunding the police, which really they were concerned about any reduction in the budget. And I hope that this will provide a little bit more information. That's actual factual information based on the data that I received from the department and conversations that both Elizabeth and I had with Chief Ritter and Captain Kilroy at the police department. And let me begin by just sharing a personal observation. Again, we have this televised, television-inspired myth about police, that they're out there all day solving serious crime. That if we did not have the police, crime would be out of control. When the reality is very little crime is reported to the police, and even less is solved by the police. Equating police with public safety requires a more nuanced understanding of what they do in the community. Part of the problem is that the police are the only 24-hour program in the city and are the go-to solution for all kinds of complaints, and there are no meaningful alternatives to respond to those issues. I'm going to briefly cover some data and key points that are in the analysis. It would be impossible for me to read through this and cover everything, but the information that is in here, while I think it's important, doesn't provide answers, all the answers to this. The conclusions on baseline staffing numbers have to be supplemented by the council's development of clear goals and outcomes for the police department that guides strategic decisions about how to align his police force with the staff resources and its particular needs. The public doesn't expect that the police will be able to prevent all crimes, contain all harms, but they do expect them to provide the best protection possible at a reasonable price. The department itself has, according to the latest that I have, is 57 total staff, 45 sworn staff at the department, a budget of $7.2 million approximately. And the sections that I will run into quickly will deal with patrol, dispatch, and detective investigations. Now, the proper allocation of patrol staff is critical to having officers readily available to respond to calls for service and to provide law enforcement services to the public. Available patrol staff in the department are 4 platoons, 4 sergeants, 4 corporals, 23 police officers, 4 dispatchers, 3 specialized officers, 1 a juvenile, 1 a housing, and 1 a community service officer. There also appear to be 3 vacancies that are in the sworn staff department as well that I did not include in this analysis. Understanding the actual workload requires reviewing the total calls for service that they receive, the call for service handling times, the officer's time to respond to the call for service, and officer-initiated activities and administrative tasks that are part of their job. The patrol division call for services, if you look at major crime, there were 272 major crime calls for service. Property crimes, there were 390 property crimes. And property crimes usually begin with the patrol staff. Major crimes essentially are investigated by the detective division. And property crimes is one of the largest sections of crime in the community. They had 55 burglaries, 327 larcenies, and 8 motor vehicle thefts, which were included in the property crime arena. The larceny issue is a difficult issue for police departments across the country, because that you could be out of town for a week, somebody steals something out of a shed in your backyard, and that would probably fall into the larceny area. It's extremely difficult if there's no witnesses or identification of people to clear that case. The other component that I looked at is the annual blotter activity. The council gets this every week from the chief. And the data from the blotter required to call out of there calls with a high degree of certainty that are either self-initiated, such as traffic stops, and other kinds of activities generated by the department, such as beat monitoring and prisoner transport, that are not calls for service. So it'd be a slight lowering of call for service. The most common activities in the blotter are traffic stops were the largest thing in the blotter. Then there's a whole set of activities in there, from noise violations to disorderly persons to lost and found to alarms and to harassment. And what you see is that even though it's on the blotter activity, and many of these do not show up in property crime or major crime, there still are crimes that are being committed in this process. You can have a domestic case that will occur. It may end up being a minor dispute that is resolved by the patrol officer. It may end up in assault if somebody's putting their hands on the other person. So it's hard to say exactly what happened on those. The call for service results, again, major crimes, 662 cases. Blotter activities came out to 10,029 calls for service. So 6% of the calls for service were for major crimes. 94% were for other. The year for total, if you break that down, I tried to break it down on here to give a sense, what does that mean on a daily basis? If you have these 10,691 calls, that's 206 a week, 29 a day, 15 in a 12-hour shift. If you have 3 patrol vehicles on that 12-hour shift, it's 4 calls per patrol, per patrol vehicle per shift, per 12-hour shift. The factors I use to calculate patrol officer availability, I won't go into a lot of detail. Each officer has 2,080 hours of work hours in the course of the year. And I factored in leave, meals, shift breaks, vehicle prep, training, court, department meetings, and ended up with a figure that is around 1,470 hours that were available to be deployed in the work of the department. The call for service handling times included the response to the call, backup, report writing, and proactive patrol time. Then I won't go into the breakout, and in here you'll see where I came up with the estimated time for these activities based on review of consulting studies that have been done across the country of police departments, as well as some literature review. The summary of those workload factors, I'll skip a lot of the detail on this, that the total, when you totaled up the number of calls, the call handling time, and backup units that are responding, and reports, the workload hours come up to 10,490. With 23 patrol officers, that requires 7 officers to cover the call for service, just the individual calls. Then you have to introduce into this self-initiated activity, proactive patrol activity by the patrol itself, and we gave a 40% of their time actually being dedicated to not a call for service, but other activities that would either be self-initiated or directed by the department. And that increased the number of hours up to about 14,600. And then I included the new disclosure law and added, for every arrest that is made, added an hour to the time on that as well for processing the data, and added another 500 hours. And what we ended up with is 15,000 hours, 15,152 hours, which equates to about 10.3, if you want to be exact, officers to cover patrol activity. You have 23 sworn officers, so you had approximately 12.6 officers that, well, there's 12 staff. Let me back up a minute. to cover this, the calls for service, you have 4 shifts. So 10 patrol officers are not going to cover 4 shifts, so you need 12, a minimum of 12. And then you have 3 additional patrol officers that also have some specialized duties, so there would essentially be 15 sworn officers involved with this. And that, if you back off the amount of time for 15 sworn officers, you end up with about 11,700 hours that is not accounted for by these calculations. So there's essentially approximately 11 officers essentially that are available for some discussion as to where they should be deployed, how they should be deployed, that are available in the police department according to this analysis. In dispatch, the workload is just expressed in the number of calls that these individuals receive, but in taking the calls, they answer both emergency, non-emergency, 911, citizen-initiated, and radio transmissions back and forth between the patrols that are out in the field, checking on licenses, warrants, whatever, and outbound calls. The average dispatch time per call, according to the best I could find from all the studies, said it averages anywhere from 3 to 9 minutes. I decided we'd make it 10 minutes per call for an individual to take the call, radio the car, and have follow-up conversations with the car around different issues that they might run into in the field. And then I added a flex factor of 15 minutes an hour to free up that time in an hour for a dispatcher to have encountered somebody coming in the door. And when I was there waiting to be fingerprinted and had to be talked to, and then I coordinated with finding an officer to do the fingerprinting. So there are things like that that occur when you're sitting at dispatch. But anyway, the dispatch workload, when I calculated all this with the flex time and the 10 minutes per call for 10,691 calls, comes up to 2.6 dispatchers. And you need 4 dispatchers in the four in the 4 platoons, is it? Is the right word? So you have 4 shifts, 4 dispatchers, and we have essentially a couple of thousand hours of time beyond what I calculated is needed. And so the question is where that time is best utilized with the dispatchers that are there. 2 things that surfaced in looking at this was the patrol car computers do not function. And so if you have a traffic stop, you have to call headquarters to run the license plate, and then once you get find out it's safe to essentially move out of your car and get that car, that you need to, if you get the license of the individual, that has to be called back to the dispatch and run and then sent back to the officer in the field. And I think this is a public safety issue that needs to be looked at in terms of ensuring that we get the IT necessary to make these computers that are in the cars and probably cost a substantial amount of money at one time to actually operate. And the other I would recommend also, based on what the data that's here, and looking back at the Financial Restructuring Board's comprehensive review report, they came up with a conclusion that we as taxpayers are paying the county, our taxes are paying for a dispatch system in the county, and we're paying additional taxes to the city to have our own dispatch system, and we ought to explore again with the county, can those systems be merged in some way? And it will require not just the city and the county, but the union to be at the table to facilitate those kinds of discussions. And the detectives, the staffing, well, first of all, we have 7 detectives in the city of Plattsburgh, 3 in major crimes, 3 in drug investigations, and 1 forensic detective. There's no management level above them which I think Elizabeth was pointing out at one of our council meetings or our workshops, which is probably needed. And the staffing levels don't lend themselves for detectives to the same kind of metrics that you can find all over the internet and all over the studies for patrol. That there were no studies that I identified that said what the optimum number of investigators are for municipal police departments. So I reviewed other reports, and I said here pages 16 to 18 are all details of the reports I reviewed, and came up with, there are a lot of summaries of the average amount of caseloads that detectives ought to be handling. And it differs from big cities to small cities drastically. What we have is a total of 662 cases in the year 2019, and 390 of them were the property crimes, and detectives on the major crimes had 272 cases that they handled in the course of the year. And these property crimes, many times the patrol staff will follow up on the investigations. If it becomes a serious case or an uncooperative situation, they may refer that then up to the detectives to handle rather than the patrol officer. We don't need that. I'll just get to the summary. The detectives, when you look at the time, go on to the total. What we ended up finding, or what I ended up finding, was there's a standard for a caseload of detectives that goes anywhere from 6 to 12 per month in smaller sized cities. Some of the large cities, detectives are handling 300-400 cases a year, more than our entire caseload per detective. But I don't understand how they do that and how they're set up, so I just put that aside. It just seemed out of the realm here. And so I adopted what I thought was a reasonable, taking out of there a standard of 8 cases a month per detective. And so if you have 208 cases, when you back out the 64 drug cases, with 3 detectives in a major crime, the workload then is 17 cases a month, 17 cases a month for the unit, 6 cases for each detective. Detective caseload then is 6 cases a month for investigation. Applying what I thought was a reasonable standard of 8 cases a month, you would essentially only need 2 detectives rather than 3 to cover that workload. The forensic detective, I thought that there should be some exploration. She is also handling evidence, storage and property that is collected as part of crimes. I thought that perhaps the department could look at exploring a civilian that might be able to do that thing. It's being done that way in a number of police departments across the country, and free up a little bit of her time to assist in investigations, as well as the forensic activity and perhaps crimes and crime analysis. So it's just something to look at in the future around that particular position. Narcotic detectives, most of the work in a narcotic detective unit is proactive work. And by that, they decide when and where to start an investigation, they control the direction of the investigation, and they reign in control of the investigation until its final outcome. They handled 64 drug cases in 2019 with 55 arrests, so it was a high arrest rate. The drug seizures for 2019, they had 58 cocaine, 23 heroin seizures, 19 medical supply drugs seized, and 177 marijuana cases with seizures. There's no caseload standard that I can find anywhere for specialized units such as narcotics. These guys, because of the proactive nature of their work and the community that they live in. The best information that I could get is that people believe that from previous staffing evaluations and staffing levels, that proactive investigations such as drug are considered primarily a city policy issue. That it's up to the council, in other words, to decide what do you want done in the city around drugs. And then having the police chief and the detectives determine how they accomplish those outcomes for the city. Anyway, the active unit case is about 6 cases a month with 3 detectives. There's 2 cases a month in the drug unit. I think the workloads are, that seems like a low workload to me, but I don't think it's out of the ballpark. And then I captured a few issues that I ran across that I thought would be interesting for the council to look at in more detail down the road. One is the police blotter report, activity report, shows a wide range of police activities that get called out. And essentially, at dispatch, every call gets a car assigned, unless there's a priority call that comes in, such as an armed robbery or something like that. They'll pull cars off from the cases that they're out. So somebody complaining about the noise being a little loud in somebody's apartment will get a police officer, a patrol car that's on patrol sent to that house. We need, as a council, take a look at what the police department is doing, and what are the things that we think they should be doing, and what are the things that the community thinks they shouldn't be doing. And set some parameters around the goals and objectives. Additionally, it looks like in the activity report, the police responded to 232 mental health calls in the last year and 200 calls service calls involving drug use. I think the city ought to start a conversation with the county that has public health, mental health departments, and determine if this is a problem in the city, and it looks like a problem to me from the numbers that are here. It's not a police problem. The solution the police have is arrest, or some kind of sanction, not treatment. And this is a public health issue, I think, that better ought to be having a conversation over at the county legislature. Then I think we should examine the potential for consolidating some functions. I mentioned dispatch, but forensic is another one. We have a forensic unit, the sheriff has a forensic unit, the state police have a forensic unit. And I don't know how many, I didn't ask how many forensic examinations are being done on all of these major crime activities. Procurement, investigative expertise, there are detectives in the sheriff's department, there are detectives in the city, there are detectives at the state police. So they're not the only ones that have drug detectives out here. Expand the use of non-sworn staff. I think I mentioned it in terms of the potential for the handling of property and that is seized in a crime for evidence. But also the one that I'm particularly interested in is the police auxiliary functions. New York City probably has the largest police auxiliary program in the country, with thousands of individuals that are a part of it that are walking the streets in New York and providing the eyes and ears for the police department, speaking with individuals in the community about their concerns and relaying that information to the police, which helps them in terms of identifying crime patterns in their city and where they need to be doing. They also can do a wide variety of things. I'm not going to go on into it on here as it takes too much time. 2 other quick things with the police is dispatch. Dispatch, we need dispatch. This is really police and detectives. We need a clear priority system on dispatch and a solvability system on cases that are assigned. By solvability, there's a list that's pretty common across the country and in police departments that says if you don't have half of these 12 items, then the odds of you solving this case is negligible, and that you should move to the next immediate case. The data that I saw in the research is that 94% of all cases are solved in 30 days. Within 2 weeks, 66% of the cases are solved. Within 2 hours, 50% of the cases are solved that are investigations, average-wide across the country. So I don't know what it is in our department. But if you hold on to a case for 90 days, the odds are that you do not have a good idea who committed that crime nor good information unless somebody picks up the phone and calls, and then that case can be reactivated immediately by the department if they get new information. But it's a whole system that's available across the country, and it ought to be integrated into the police department. The narcotic detectives' work schedule, and these are working days. And it appears as though much of the activity, whenever they're making busts or whatever, are in the evening or night. And I would hope that we could get the chief to take a look at that with the detectives and see is there some way to align their schedule more closely to the activities that those detectives are performing. That's it for the police. It's like 30 pages long, if you want to look at a lot of detail on this. As I said, my hope with this is that it stimulates a further conversation with the council, with the departments. The fire department, I just wanted to take a quick look at this, and I'm not gonna, this is quick. This will not be long, it's not a lot of pages here. It's, most of us, everybody here knows, but I don't know about the public. There's a chief. There have been no assistant chiefs for quite a number of years at the fire department. I think since before you came on, I think Chief Wallace. And 36 firefighters that are there. The staff work an 8-hour shift, or they work 24 hours, and they work 8 of those 24 hours at the direction of the chief. 16 of those hours they are on call, and with the requirement only to respond to emergency calls that come into the department. The cost, I won't go into the budget. The calls for service, for the year, 2019, there were 3,171 calls for service, ambulance service. I didn't have the data for other calls for the year, but I took the data that the chief gave me from January to July 31, and there were 101,586 ambulance calls, 46 fire calls, and 753 other calls that go out. I think typically they come into us as fire and other, I think, other ambulance calls combined. And the other calls, the largest amount of that 753 are false alarms. There were 297 false alarm calls that rolled out of the fire departments, the most frequent call that the fire department gets. And then others are hazardous conditions, explosions, service calls, good intent calls, weather disaster calls. So there's a range of things that they do besides fire. But if you look at fire calls, 2% of all the calls during January to July 31st were to the fire department were for fire-related incidents. That's the 46 that the chief identified for me. And approximately 18 of those fire calls involved some type of building. The rest were a variety of other calls, such as grass fire, the hedge, I think down here we had on Cumberland Avenue. There are other fires that take place in the city that could be an ambulance as well. And ambulance service costs, I think we've been looking at that as part of our budget anyway. I won't go through the cost numbers on here that I got from Richard. But I would this issue that I think is the key issue is we have an MOU on a second ambulance with the fire department that we created back in February, March, I believe it was. So kind of before COVID really hit hard in the city. And that MOU essentially said they were down to 32 firefighters, and we would add 4 firefighters, and if they would add a second ambulance, and that second ambulance was anticipated to cover the cost of the 4 firefighters and the operation of the ambulance. I can tell you right now, the revenue for ambulance is running about the same this year as it was a year ago with a single ambulance. There's been no increase. So my request, or not request, but what I wrote in here is I think the council should direct the mayor to give notice to union to terminate the second ambulance MOU and offer to see if we can establish a negotiation with another MOU between the fire department, the union, that deals with the cost associated of the 4 firefighters and enables retention of those 4 firefighters in the department. And then the other issue is just as my issue probably, all firefighters are being paid to attend months of training at the New York State Fire Academy, being trained to respond to emergency services that comprise 25% of their job when they get back here. That's if you consider false alarms not worthy of professional staff time. The council should determine if it's more cost effective and makes sense to hire EMTs and paraprofessionals to operate the ambulance service, since that's 75% of the cost of the 75% of the calls that the department gets, not the cost. And train those medical professionals as volunteer firefighters to supplement the core professional firefighting staff. I think we should also explore the impact of contracting with CVPH for ambulance service. I know the Chief Lawless has provided some very good data on, you know, the rationale for the city maintaining an ambulance service. I personally believe on any service that we're offering, where the private sector is offering the same service, it's an obligation on the part of the council and the city to at least examine the potential of that service delivering the same service at lower cost, and we should always look outside ourselves. I think that our responsibility as a government is not to provide services, but ensure that services are provided that are essential to the city, and that's an option that we would have. I think we should expand the role of the fire department in prevention. I think we have a lot of old homes. The new homes that are being built are all being built with not homes, but apartment complexes are being built with sprinkler systems, and reduced. That's part of the reason why we had such a reduction probably in house fires. But we have a lot of homes in this city that could use an examination by the fire department for fire safety issues, and identify the issues, and then work with perhaps the building inspector's office and community development, if there's the community grant monies, to assist those individuals in bringing their buildings, their homes up to code, and preventing even more fires from occurring in Plattsburgh. And then I think we should work with the union to explore issues associated with developing a combination department, maybe by reactivating Rescue Hall 5, or developing a military staffing model to supplement the professional staff that is here in the city. I think the long-term benefits of that would pay great dividends and still provide essential public services in the fire department. And that's it. I appreciate you giving me the time to provide this information.
Does anyone have any questions for Councilor Barbell?
Yes,
Okay.
just out of curiosity, the police department where they had the 300 cases per narcotic officer, or something like that, you said, where they have a larger number of officers, or not, actually, larger number of cases and like a smaller number of officers?
Not in narcotics.
Not in narcotics.
62 were the cases all per year.
Okay, I was just wondering how many of them were successfully, came to a successful conclusion or an arrest?
How many narcotics cases? They solved a large number of the narcotics.
No, the
cases.
city did. The city of Plattsburgh had, if I'm correct, had an 85% success rate in their arrest and towards investigations. What I wanted to compare was how many in the other department that you used analysis for, you said there was.
Well, I didn't have a single department. It was a combination of studies that were done across the United States.
Do you know what the arrest rate was?
I did not tell you that now.
Well, I just thought 85% was pretty good.
Absolutely.
All right. I was just wanting to compare.
Thank you very much, Counselor Barbell. I just want all of you to know that Counselor Barbell has worked on this for months and months. And he's been very diligent about it, collecting data from the police department, the fire department, the city chamberlain, and he's done an excellent job of providing us some factual data to use for our further discussions about what to do in the future with police, fire.
Well, I would just add, as you look at this, hopefully it will stimulate a discussion. There is more accurate data that can be obtained out of, say, the police department. Every call that goes out is recorded in a computer. Every time that car is put back into service is recorded in a computer. So you could actually calculate a lot better than what I was able to get from looking at an analysis of other studies that have been done doing that process using I don't know what the data system is, Chief, but you can get very accurate data about the number, the calls that went out and the time it took on those calls for each call. I don't think I was willing to put that my chief was going to give me that printout. I don't know that I was going to do that. But my hope with this is that this is, as I said up front, the biggest issue that I saw coming out of this is the council needs to have a conversation about what does the community want the police department to do? What is it that you expect? There's a wide range of activities out here that are providing, I would say, creating a sense of security for people who live in the city, even though they may not be crimes that the police are doing. So it's not an easy question to answer about what should the police department be doing. But we have a good start by looking at the activity plotter, that there are things in there that, perhaps we can chip away at some of the things that would free up more officer time.
Thank you again, Councilor Barbell. We have 4 minutes left before the meeting begins, so today I'd just like to share some new business with you. Today, Mr. Marks has promised to produce a report to give us the list of changes in the upcoming budget, and I would like to recommend that the councilors study that list. I personally would prefer an electronic or digital copy of that list so that I can work with it. But I would propose then that once we receive that list in our hands, that we call for another work session to go over that list, discuss it among ourselves, and prioritize it so that we can make the best decisions given the financial conditions of our city. So I would propose that perhaps a good day for us to do that would be Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m., just like we did last Saturday. I know all of us would rather be doing things with our families or friends, or maybe just sitting at home in front of the television on Saturday morning. But it's crucial that we get this done. So how does that sound? Can I get some feedback? Will Saturday morning work? I know it will not work for you, and I'm sorry about that, Councilor Brody.
I don't know if it's gonna work for Patrick, he's not here, so I don't know about him.
Would it work for you, Councilor Gibbs?
Reluctantly, yes.
Councilor Barbell? Yes. Councilor Moore?
Yes.
All right. Let's
But unless we have Patrick, we'd have 2 full counselors missing,
Yeah,
so.
we can't have 2 missing.
Yeah. And I'm sad that we can't have you there.
I can make almost any weekday work, but I'm committed to the clients every
I
single
know.
Saturday and Sunday. Unless you want to wait till after the second week in December, then I have some Saturdays free.
Well, both Patrick and Elizabeth have full-time jobs, so it's difficult for
Allegedly.
them to meet during the week.
I have
What-
Thanksgiving vacation coming up.
Oh, don't even. I might throw this at you. What about Monday afternoon? That worked for you last time, or this week, what am I saying? It worked for you this week. What about a Monday afternoon?
I can make almost
I know you
any day
can.
free for this.
Well, why don't we communicate this by email when Patrick can respond?
Yeah.
Because Patrick and Steve and I, Patrick and I are the ones, like you said, working full-time, and then we already know that you can't meet on a Saturday.
Patrick works most every weekday, so we lose somebody either way.
Well, it might be, if it starts at 4, he could be out of court at 4 o'clock.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we move on. We have 2 ideas, Monday afternoon or Saturday. We'll explore those. And I will ask, is there any other new business at this time? So you're gonna have to hold it because it's almost time to start the regular council meeting. So I would propose then that we adjourn this meeting of the Finance Committee. I second.
Councilman Kelly? Sorry.
Yes.
Councilman Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes. Let's begin tonight's council meeting now with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Councilor Barbell?
Here.
Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Gibbs?
Here.
Councilor Brody?
Here.
Councilor McFarland? Councilor Moore?
Here.
Just a couple of items, one short and one a little bit longer. Remember that for next week, our council meeting will be on Tuesday, November 24th, at the usual times for the council and committee meetings. And this allows us to have one day following the meeting to process any resolutions, et cetera, before Thanksgiving. And we have 4 meetings left, one for each committee over the year, because recall, we go into a winter recess after the meeting on December 17th. So please do your business in your various committees accordingly, one meeting for each committee remaining. The next item is a little bit longer. I think you've all been watching the news, and we talk about it almost every week. With regard to COVID worldwide, 57 million cases as of today, 1.36 million deaths. In the United States, 12 million cases and 257,000 deaths. We're starting to move up to 2,000 deaths per day in the U.S. That's a rate comparable to April and May of this year. And 200,000 cases per day, which is an absolute record for the United States, and she shows no sign of peaking out at this point. Works out about 424 cases for every week per 100,000 American citizens. The definition of a red zone is 100 cases per 100,000 over a week. So the country's 4 times beyond red zone on average, but every single state is in red zone now. We're doing a little bit better in Clinton County. We're only at 115 cases per 100,000 per week. Still in red zone, but about a quarter the rate of the rest of the country. But we continue to accelerate just like everywhere else. And every single scientist you hear from nowadays say, don't expect this to abate anytime soon. It may even accelerate over the next couple of months, right into February. Thank God that we have a vaccine coming, although we shouldn't have expected to help anybody but healthcare workers for at least into April, May, or June, optimistically speaking, but certainly we see it. I think John Canosa used the term correctly today, the director of the Clinton High Health Department. I talked to him. We have a light at the end of a very, very long tunnel ahead of us, so we can't be complacent. And I know Thanksgiving is coming up, but we need to start reestablishing protocols that we put in place in the city of Plattsburgh. So I'm going to recommend, knowing that it's incredibly difficult for some of the innovations that we've done here to get approval at the state level, including the innovation of social distancing on March 16th, as you recall, and mask wearing on April 2nd. There's not much we can do except to encourage other residents and businesses in our city to adopt the practices I'm going to recommend today for City Hall and city employees and city facilities. I've been working with the department heads, most all department heads except for a couple have explained to me that they're ready for stricter protocols. Some of them actually have already put them in place. So with your concurrence, I'd like to begin on Monday, November 16th at 8 a.m. with having a maximum assembly size in any city facility of 10 people. To put that in perspective, you see little X's in the room here. We've designed this room for the previous protocol of 6 feet separation, and that works out about 25 people. At the infection rate in Clinton County right now, about 1.8% positives when we do tests each day. That means with 25 people in the room, there's a 37% chance somebody in this room has COVID at a given day. I actually think the rate in the Clinton County might be closer to 3%. If we pull the SUNY Plattsburgh out of it, the stats actually worsen somewhat because SUNY Plattsburgh actually has a much better testing rate and more effective isolating of their students than the rest of the county. So let's say we really have about a 3% rate. That means that with 25 people in this room, on average, there's 53% chance that somebody has COVID in this room. I also believe that the city is higher than the county for obvious reasons, although I can't get that data. So it seems like for almost a certainty on a given day, meeting day, there's a very high probability that somebody has COVID in this room. I'm going to leave it to the council to decide what you want to do with council meetings. As you know, we never stopped allowing for face-to-face for council meetings. That will be your call, it's your council. And you may want to have some discussion today. But for the city buildings, I'm going to instruct the city with your concurrence, city employees, to go back to delivering all of our city services, not just essential services, but all of our city services, just like we always have, but primarily through email, postal service, telephone, fillable PDFs, document exchange, online bill pay, drop boxes, YouTube, Zoom, and Skype meetings, or any other technology we can either use now or can muster, and still allow for essential, for those meetings that we can't accommodate some other way to be done through face-to-face by appointment only, very much like we did in March, April, May, and June of this year, as you recall. I'm going to ask to expand separation in our offices and with our clients to 10 feet rather than 6 feet, based on conversations with the health department today. And I've asked every one of our department heads to make sure that this can be accommodated in their spaces. And they all believe they can. We may need to use some extra office space. We've got 1 or 2 extra offices in City Hall right now. I'm going to reserve them to anybody who feels the need for health reasons to have their own isolated space to fully accommodate them as well. If we need to accommodate even more people for individual needs, I may ask the library. I know they've got some space to accommodate more people up there as well, but my primary goal is to keep our staff safe and keep our public safe who may be meeting with them. Other things I'm going to do is I'd like to explore reopening of the Miller Street window if possible for those people that have to pay their bills by drive up or through a window rather than having them come into the City Hall. I can't determine whether that's possible. I think there may be an issue with internet connection at the Miller Street building, so let's explore that, but let's do that tomorrow and see if that might be an outlet to make sure you can still service your customers that can't do anything by any other way except for face-to-face. Hopefully there'll be a small number of customers once they realize that we're moving back to March, April, May, June.
I understand from Bill Tracy that everything has been kind of gutted from that building, so we haven't wired it all for internet connections, but people are still using the Dropbox now.
Right.
And, they like that service, and we're doing a lot of voicemail, telephone conversations, emails, a lot of transactions being done that way. So going back to what we were doing when it was on lockdown, we'll definitely be able to keep up with the activity but we'll check out what we can do over there as well.
Thank
Just-
you.
Just a question,
Yes,
lockbox,
Dropbox.
yes. Your department was scheduled for one less employee on the budget. If we go back to it, won't you you'll need that extra person, won't you?
Go back to what?
If we're resetting the protocols a little bit.
I don't think that's anything to do with that person. I need that person regardless of which way we go.
Okay.
Because if we don't have a person, we will fall behind the cash applications.
This will just emphasize it even more than one.
Yeah, I think that it's absolutely necessary to have that person because we need the volume of time to be able to answer all of the questions electronically, by telephone. There's a lot of activity by phone and by email. So if we keep everybody busy on that, we can keep up with that. And they were doing it remotely from home, which if that comes to the next step, we can still operate that way quite easily as long as we have that full set.
It's essentially how that is.
Yes.
So Mayor, can I ask a question? You mentioned a date, but I didn't hear you. Yeah, I heard Monday, but then I didn't understand the date.
I believe based on the discussion with the department heads, we'd be ready to do this as of Monday of next week.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sorry, I was late. What are we talking about?
Moving to a system where we minimize the number of people coming into City Hall to try to prevent any further propagation of COVID-19. But still, we're delivering all of our services. We're doing appointments as necessary, just as the finance department, the clerk's department, all of my department heads did back in this previous era. So there's no reduction of services, but we need to redouble our effort to figure out how to deliver those services as best we can remotely. I think that that's all that I'd like to include in this directive. Any staff member that feels the need for health reasons, a KN95 mask to protect them. As you know, masks are really designed to protect everybody else. There is now additional research since we first put in a mask wearing policy in the city in April 2nd, that even a cloth mask does also protect the user, although it's always been designed to protect the people you come into contact with. But certainly a KN95 mask protects the user. The 95 means 95% effective in preventing the user from getting infected. So if there are any particular needs that some of our staff may need to have accommodated, we'll work to do so in giving them better PPE or isolated offices, et cetera, to do their business. So this isn't a reduction of services. This isn't a lockdown. This is simply trying to manage the resources all we have better to do our part in reducing the level of infections communication in the city of Plattsburgh. You probably have heard, some of you may have heard, there's been a couple of cases in the fire department and an isolation case in the police department. We're monitoring those. I know that Chief Lawless is working very closely with your advisor at the health department on this. And they've always had quite good protocols. I'm asking our workers when they're in shared vehicles to also wear masks, when they're anywhere near the public to wear masks. So I know I'm expanding that protocol a little bit more than what we've applied in the past. But with a bit greater amount of research we've had since imposing our 6-foot separation, I and the health department director agree that further extending of that distance is warranted at this time, especially given the pretty extreme acceleration we've been seeing in Clinton County. Last comment I'll make is that I'm quite gravely concerned about this. Obviously, we're doing everything we can in the city of Plattsburgh amongst our buildings and our employees. I don't think we can do much more than what I'm proposing. I'm afraid for the nation. There's about a 2 to 3 week lag between the observance of higher levels of cases and actual ICU admissions and then deaths. So we haven't even seen the huge acceleration there yet because we're only seeing the big acceleration in cases starting 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we're on the cusp of something that is certainly the nation isn't insulated from, and I have no reason to believe Clinton County is insulated from either. So this is, I believe, personally, it's going to get bad. And that sharpens my awareness to do absolutely anything we can do to try to protect our citizens and our staff. So that's what motivates me. If you all feel strongly that I shouldn't do this, I'm gonna take it under advisement, certainly we can have some discussion on that, but I believe this is something that probably is warranted. So please.
I applaud you in your efforts.
Thank you.
One thing that we've done at school is put up kind of like plexiglass barriers.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, is that in place in your office, Richard? Where, and at the city clerk's office where people are coming? And are there those kind of barriers like in between your employee desks as well, so that
Yes.
they're protected?
Yeah, we have 3 different offices. Mine is only me, but every time someone comes in, they have a mask and I put on a mask. In data processing, they're more than 10 feet apart as far as their seating, and they do have glass partitions and one cloth partition between them. But I've told them you have to wear the mask as well, and everybody's gonna do that. The customer counter, the main one where we receive people, is a full glass partition. And then we're gonna seat every other workstation down there, so that gives us about 12 feet between each one of the people that work there, but they're all gonna wear masks. And of course, we have somebody that's in an office that can close the door, but they're 12 feet back of the people that are working out the counter. And then also accounts payable has a cloth partition and is about 15 feet back of the front desk, and they're wearing masks as well. So none of this is gonna be a problem for us. It's just a matter of what, we're gonna do with the customers if we tell them they can't come in personally, and make appointments and so forth, or if the lockdown happens, if that's the next step, But we can accommodate this, no problem.
Okay.
And our city clerk also separated the desks even farther to make sure they were 10 feet apart as well to accommodate this.
Mike, what about your workers in their trucks? And that's really tough because I mean, in the summertime, it's different where, you can have your guys on the outside, but.
It really is no different. I mean, the summertime, after it first hit, we were wearing masks, the trucks. Let's see us run around. Basically, it's on the managers and the supervisors to make sure they are wearing a mask and being diligent about it. A lot of times for us, fortunately, for instance, we have a water main leak or something like that, multiple vehicles have to go there, so you have a single person in. But anytime there's more than one person in a pickup truck, they're wearing a mask. The people are wearing masks full time now. In the shop, we split up our personnel in groups at 3 distinct locations to split workforce in case we have an infection. So we have several buildings throughout the city where we're reporting. We also do screening prior to their work shift. So we go through and physically screen and check everyone off. We've been doing that all along.
John and Bill from MLD and Water, so I don't think I see them here, but there's John, but they're also willing to put in increased protocol. MLD already has, and I think you've already got your existing plan you continue to work on, are willing to stagger people on different shifts, as you recall, we did so back in the March, April, May timeframe if necessary as well. Is that correct, Mr. Rupp?
Yes. Very shortly too, we will have night shift going, so that will thin out some of our staffing in-house. So because we go to the winter hours where we have a crew on at 4 at night, that's 4 less people that will be in the group.
Any additional questions or concerns?
Did we want to talk about your, not really your suggestion, but your thought about us going to Zoom meetings? Or I don't know if the council wants to talk about that now, or.
Might as well. You brought it up.
Yeah, well, the mayor,
What do you
no,
think?
the mayor brought it up.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's safer, but I don't know how the rest of the council feels. I mean, my Plattsburgh High School has a COVID positive student, so the high school is all remote. I teach in a middle school, high school. We're remote until after Thanksgiving because we've got a COVID positive case. And I observe the behavior of my students, when I leave school and I, drive down to get onto the highway and I pass carfuls of students, not wearing masks or social distancing. Those are the same students that are in my classes. I mean, this is the behavior that is spreading this virus, and it's climbing very rapidly. And I think it's safer for us to be doing this by Zoom, but that's just a suggestion. I don't know how the remainder of the council feels.
Do we have a straw poll of the council to get a sense of how you'd like to proceed on that? Councilor Kelly?
No, I'm not suggesting we close City Hall to people who want to come and observe. That's not what I'm saying, but I think it would be safer for us to do it by Zoom, but just a
I really
suggestion.
appreciated the work that was done to make the option to either come to City Hall to attend a meeting if you wish, or to attend from home. And I took advantage of both of those methods the last time we were in this situation. So I would hope for something like that, so that we can use either option.
I would be in favor of that also.
Yeah, I think I would be in favor of, like what Mike mentioned, we could attend remotely, the holidays are coming up, a lot of people are gonna be visiting and coming in contact with each other. If the option is that we can meet remotely, we probably should. We don't want to be part of the problem, I guess.
Me personally, I don't really care. I think there is certainly some benefit of being here personally, just to be able to talk to people. And I don't really recall members of the public taking too much advantage of showing up on the Zoom meetings. But I certainly had no problems with the Zoom meetings either when they were happening. And certainly if things are going south and that's safer, I don't have any problem with going to Zoom meetings.
Well, like Mike said, we could have the option of coming, and I think that's what happened originally when we were doing this. Some people came to the meeting, and other people attended remotely, so it'd be your option if you felt you wanted to come, you could.
Well, yeah, if there's Zoom meetings, I would probably be from my house, but yeah, that's a good one.
I think it's a good idea. Safety above all things.
Well, we'd have some technology things to work with. Ethan helped us run the Zoom meetings, if you recall. When we had that, we had a real hard time doing the mixed meetings, to be honest. Very problematic technology-wise. So I don't know if we'd have that feature of having public testimony via coming in person. That was the problematic part, although they can certainly hop in on Zoom, as you know. You do that regularly for your meetings, so it's kind of one or the other, but if you wanted to rotate amongst different councils, having one council here convening for any public people who might want to come at each meeting, then that's fine too. I don't know if I want to put Beth in the position of coming and trying to do this dual system and create all kinds of problems, and it risks her health. But we could certainly rotate amongst the council themselves to convene meetings in person as well as on Zoom, and have you be maintaining your Zoom session here. So that's something we could try to put in place. We got a full, well, not a week, I guess. We've got 5 days to work that out, because our next meeting's actually in 5 days rather than 7. Okay. So I think
Could
there's
we-
at least a consensus on converting to Zoom. And then there's still an open question on how to do the logistics if somebody wanted to come in person.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the council wants to have that option of the Zoom, right?
I never Zoomed.
It's easy. If we go that route, it's my recollection over the springtime when we were in pause, that there was the ability to get comments through the YouTube Live. I don't know if that's something.
Well, I
we
think
want-
that was the problem. It's either Zoom or YouTube. And when we tried to do the mixed thing, that's when it became kind of problematic. But in Zoom, they can still register to comment, and then they can be brought in to do they'll still be broadcast, and then they'd be brought in to do their commentary.
And that's the process we've been using with the ZBA and the planning board. So we'll have people that are on the session with the council members, and then if a member of the public wants to participate, there's a raise their hand feature, and then the moderator can allow them in as they come, or as they raise their hands.
Is there any time limit
Yeah,
on those?
Same rules that you would apply in this setting, yeah. Actually, more control because you can use the mic.
Ethan, are you prepared to help us facilitate that over the
Yeah.
next few weeks? Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, let's continue.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on November 12, 2020, and special meeting of the Common Council held on November 16, 2020 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Counselor Kelly, second by Counselor Barbell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending November 18, 2020 in the amount of $506,275.42 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Counselor Moore, second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You've got your usual reports in your packet. Are there any additional reports, beginning with governance, strategy, city operations, Counselor Barbell?
Nothing at this time.
City infrastructure, Counselor Moore.
Nothing special, we're getting ready for this, and hopefully we won't get all the snow, but we'll be prepared. That's all we have.
Finance and budget, Counselor Kelly.
Yes, just before the main meeting began tonight, we were having a discussion about when to have our next budget workshop. And two options are on the table. This is primarily for Councilor McFarland, who wasn't here. There are two options on the table. One is this Saturday at 10, the other is Monday at 3 o'clock. Do you have a preference, Councilor McFarland?
My preference is for usually not Saturday at 10 o'clock. Let me look at my schedule. What dates were you talking, you're talking about the 23rd, Mike?
This coming Monday, I believe,
Yep.
is the 23rd. Yes, yes.
So I'm unavailable then, so.
So 3 o'clock Monday will be our finance.
No, that's when I'm unavailable.
Oh, you're unavailable. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said I'm
Yes,
available.
those are the two options, Saturday at 10 o'clock.
Could you do a 4 o'clock on Monday, Patrick?
Also no,
Also, no. Okay.
I can do a 6 o'clock, but I don't really want to do that too, so Saturday at 10 will work.
So
Steve,
shall
is there
we
any
do-
way for you, is there any way for you to attend? Do you have somebody who can work in your stead?
No, I'm the auctioneer.
I didn't know if you had somebody else.
My clients expect me to, that's a mandatory thing. I mean, I can scoot around on other things and send them on other jobs, but I have committed to my client and they expect my personal service and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, I can't. It's like Patrick going to court and looking at his client saying, I'll be back because I got a meeting and this lawyer's gonna cover for you.
Well, why don't we do the Monday at 3, because Steve could be there. I made it to the last two, and I will try to call in.
I can be here at 6 too. My Monday I can make free anytime. I can make any day of the week free. Except for Friday, well, Saturday, Sunday.
I could be here Monday at 6, but I would not be able to stay beyond 7 o'clock. So,
We need to meet earlier on Tuesday. We
I
haven't-
can't.
We haven't had one that short yet.
Tuesday's common council meeting.
oh yeah,
That's right.
that's right.
That's why I got that right in my calendar.
All right, so Monday at 3 then, is that what we agreed? Richard, are you able to be here?
Yes,
Okay.
I can do Saturday off, cancel some flights, but I can show Saturday as well.
So did we agree Monday at 3? Is that our consensus?
Yes.
Okay.
I would also like to recommend that we have that meeting in the old council chambers. Just seems like it's more conducive to discussion in there. And we will observe the 10-foot distancing rule.
There's tables set up in there, Doug and I, even, had a training or a website in there, so there's tables set up, we'll probably have to move them distance the other way.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you, Sylvia, for letting us know about that. Good news. Okay, thank you. Okay, so 3 o'clock in the old council chambers on Monday.
Anything else from finance and budget? Seeing none, public safety?
So I don't have any updates, but next week is our last public safety meeting for the year. And with the climbing COVID cases, can both chiefs be ready to discuss basically what your COVID plan is going to be, especially if you have mounting numbers of employees who become sick? Like what's going to be your organization structure? How are you going to be able to operate if you have employees who are ill? And I would really like a report on that, and so the council and the public knows what will happen. And that's it.
Councilor Collaborator, Councilor McFarland.
No updates at this time.
And MLD Board President, Councilor McFarland.
Also no updates at this time.
Resolved, the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Gibbs, and second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondences, recommendations, and boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills ordered by the common council for the week ending November 20th, 2020 in the amount of $417,306.70 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Moore and second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion?
I have a different number on my agenda. Did you say $417,306?
$417,306.70.
It was on the wrong page.
Oh,
I was looking at the list from last week.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Are there any persons wishing to address the council on items on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, please continue.
motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Barbell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Open for discussion on adoption of local law P5 of 2020.
Yeah, I had a question for Ira. Basically, I know you're the one who drafted this local law, so can you just like briefly describe the problem it sets to address and how
Sure.
it properly addresses that?
This is, the problem is, and the fire department went out on 297 false alarms last year. The city police department went out on 307 burglar alarms, 300 of them were false alarms. That's close to 600 false alarms that patrol staff, it isn't like one officer going out to clear a building. When they go in, there's usually 2 or 3 patrol cars that are going to be there to clear that building. I don't know exactly the number, but if they go out with one truck, you've got at least 4 firefighters tied up at that building. That is essentially a misuse of individual staff time in the city that costs, potentially cost if a real call came in, that there was a fire call. You're delaying the response that the department is going to be able to make to that. Other cities have put this law was based on a national model that fire chiefs and police chiefs and the alarm companies all participated in the components of this. It has been looked at by both police Chief Ritter, and he made comments and changes that have been incorporated in it. Chief Lawless made comments on it that were incorporated. Joe McMahon made comments on it that were incorporated and changed. We went from a 1-year licensing to a 3-year licensing process to lessen any kind of burden that would be involved with the building inspector's office. So it's been reviewed by most individuals. I think it makes tremendous sense. Cities that have put this in place have seen in the first year a 20 to 40% drop in the number of false alarms that are responded. That we have a relatively low escalation clause, I think, in here in terms of the penalty that will accrue to the apartment, to the alarm owner. The first 2 visits by the police or the fire are free. There will be no penalty to the individual. They would, in all likelihood, inform that individual that future calls could end up costing this individual substantial money. He should engage the alarm company to come and review his system to make sure it is functioning properly, or as we heard with one of the local lawyers' offices, to inform the lawyers when they're coming in that they need to shut off the alarm when they come in after hours into that building. It escalates over then to like, I think it's $100, $150, $100 the next time, $150, and then $500, I think, for the fifth violation. And then it stays at that level for any future violations.
There was one public commenter who had a concern which was fully addressed by legal
Yeah,
counsel.
I gave that update last week, Ira, you weren't here, but I did send you an email. That concern was that it was in contravention to the state's licensing of the alarm companies, and on reviewing that and obviously reviewing the local law, we're focusing on the end user, not the alarm company with this regulation.
There's a question about, there's certain things, because I have alarm systems. A couple of natural events happen that will set the alarms off, like power outage.
Yes.
Power goes out, it causes an automatic dial. And now a person like myself, I have 4 businesses, all 4 alarm, and I'll get calls on all 4.
There's an exemption for any kind of natural disaster.
That, and the 4th of July sets them off.
Yeah, it does not count towards your alarm system not functioning properly. That's built into the system.
Any further questions or concerns? Roll call?
Council Barbell?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Brody?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yeah.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the public forum be made available commencing December 1st, 2020, for a period of 40 days at Trinity Park, providing free, equal, and unrestricted access for holiday displays. The maximum size is 10 by 10, and requests must be filed with the city clerk's office in advance. $20 fee for electricity and certificate of insurance are required.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion.
So what is this doing exactly? Obviously, it kind of speaks for itself, but what bigger space does this open up? Like, opens up space for a bunch of people to set up 10 by 10 displays, or one 10 by 10 display that people share?
Multiple spaces. In the past, there's only been 1 or 2 people that have taken advantage of that. This template of this resolution was designed several years ago in an attempt to balance everyone's First Amendment rights to exercise their religion or their First Amendment rights, and also not create any support from a governmental institution that's supporting a specific religion. So it's a free expression space. Again, in the past, it's only been 1 entity, but it does create a little island throughout Trinity Park several islands that could be utilized for those purposes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Council Barbell?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Brody?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
No.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, as a result of the request for proposals as well as the recommendation of the city's healthcare consultant, the Common Council authorizes the mayor to sign a renewal pharmacy contract with ProAct.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion?
Yeah, could you explain what the renewal pharmacy contract with ProAct is?
This is we have a contract, by the way, it's interesting to note that about half of our healthcare costs are not actually in doctor's visits in hospitals, they're in drug costs. And as you know, we've engaged a new consultant a few years ago to help us bring down those costs, and he's done that very effectively, not only bringing down the cost, but also bringing down the rate of increase of the costs, which is great for us because we're self-insured, and that could have been very costly otherwise. And one of the contractors that he works with is called ProAct. I think he's tweaked it a little bit for next year as well to receive even greater cost savings for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure if everybody's gotten a copy of the report, but there is one where Burnham Associates asked Align RX, who is an outside consultant, to review all the different options for the city. And they're recommending to change our setup with the incumbent ProAct, but go to a traditional contract type as opposed to transparent, because that's going to save us roughly $833,000 over a 3-year period on pharmacy costs. Now, some of the other participants in this study, we're gonna save a little bit more. However, with staying with the current provider, we have no disruption to our current staff and retirees. There was gonna be some level of disruption that was gonna hit with some of the others, even though they were competitive. Recommendation from Mark Crawford and Vernon was to stay with our incumbent provider, but switch to the traditional mode of supplying drugs.
And are we switching to the traditional mode?
This would do it
Okay.
if we agree to this, yes. I can send everybody a copy of this. I think the mayor, you might have this as well, if you can forward on.
Sure.
It's pretty interesting that they did such a good job on an RFP for pharmacy providers and dug into it pretty deeply.
I'm also, by the way, recommending that for our main healthcare, it's not so much healthcare provider, because they're really just administering our health plans. We're not subscribing to somebody else's health plan, but going out next year again, when the contract is due for the healthcare administrator to also do another RFP. That's the other side, not the drug side, but the actual Blue Cross side. There's competing Blue Crosses. We use Blue Cross of the Northeast, do we? And
Blue Shield Northeastern New York.
right.
We want to discuss that now too, since that's the next item. Can we discuss that now too, since we're
Sure.
into it, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, Blue Shield Northeastern New York is basically the administrator of our claims. And it's ideal to have a blue member doing that, a blue provider, member of the Blue Cross Blue Shield network across the country, because it gives us access outside of, our local area. Not only does it do that, but it also provides that we get the blue costs, which are driven down as low as possible. If you're with another provider, your healthcare costs can be a little bit higher, but Blue Shield, Blue Cross, they have such a big network, they're able to keep the costs down as much as possible for their participants. So the renewal there that we're looking at is the stop loss insurance for next year, where we say that if someone has a large claim, the costs stop at $125,000 per person. And we pay $735,000 a year to provide that. We're taking just a slightly different option next year. We looked at increasing to $150,000 or $175,000 of stop loss, but we're actually going with what's called a $60,000 aggregating specific corridor, which means our cost stays the same as it is presently, $735,000 instead of going up to $795,000. And that $60,000 can provide us with savings as large claims accumulate. They'll go over the 125 and hit that 60,000. But if we don't exceed that 125 for our large claims, then that 60,000 will be our savings. But we'll be capped still at the same level, $125,000 for large claims.
So he's referring to item D that you'll be looking at next.
Yes.
What I was referring to is also whenever one of the contracts, one of these big providers like Blue Shield comes up to do an RFP and make sure they're the most competitive. So I would recommend that you consider that for next year when the renewal comes up sometime near the end of next year, I think it is. You got plenty of time to think about this.
Yeah, I think Vernon said that they were going to do the RFP to include Excellus and any other blue members and any other providers in our area.
Any further questions on item C? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, the common council authorizes the mayor to sign a renewal annual stop loss insurance contract with Blue Shield, Northeastern New York.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion. And I think we already started in on that discussion. No further discussion, roll call.
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody? Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
No travel requests this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Any new business or council reports?
I don't have any council reports, but I was wondering, I have some more questions about the budget. Would Richard, do you guys want to talk about this now, or do you want to save it for Monday's work session, or what do you want to do? So I still have questions about what's on this budget.
Maybe hold that till Monday, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I can.
That would give us time.
To review the numbers yet, so.
What's that?
We haven't had a chance to review the numbers, I guess they're forthcoming shortly.
I do have a copy, hard copy of it here for everybody if it's permissible.
Yeah, certainly,
I did
yeah.
send one to the mayor, so that he's got the electronic copy in Excel format. Being in Excel, you can, play with the numbers, do what else with the numbers. Would you like a hard copy?
Yeah, I would love one.
Okay?
Yeah, please, thank you.
This reflects the changes from the last.
This reflects all the changes of the,
Yeah, let me explain what this is. When you take a look at it, it's a lot of different columns, so don't be afraid of the volume of numbers on the page. They're all pretty much saying the same thing, it's just different levels of the budget being reported. First column, the first column is 2019's actual numbers, so that's pretty easy to understand, that's where we actually were last year. And you see 2020 original budget, 2020 revised. And then 2021 requested means that's what the department submitted to us back in June. The 2021 mayor is the June 25th budget that was issued. The revised mayor are the numbers that the mayor just put together for October. And I put them in exactly as they were outlined in the other report. And then, of course, this council level budget, what that is when we get past the mayor's budget, at whatever point in time we do that, I roll that forward in our system. So our system freezes that set of numbers, and we go forward to the council level. So what I've done is all the budget changes that have been discussed and recommended are in this set of numbers in the council. And you'll see the difference between the mayor's revised and that column of numbers. So once we look at this thoroughly, I mean, we can go right down the list and we can go back over what was recommended. Now, I've just done the general fund at this point, so I still have to work on the rec complex and the parking, because we've discussed those two funds as well.
So on the last page,
Yep,
that is you've got total revenue, total expense,
yes.
so that's a break-even budget?
So far, yes. What I've been doing with that one as I've been making the changes is, I think it was at your request, can you keep on telling me what the tax rate is? Now, if you go back to the front page at the very top, okay, the mayor's budget back in June had an 1154 rate based on a 990,537 assessed value. The revised mayor's budget is 999,512 assessed, and it works up to 999, and that's based on the real property tax number that's right below that tax rate. So in other words, you take
Got it.
the real property tax number divided by the number of the assessed value, and you multiply it times 1,000 and times -1, so you get it to be a positive figure, and it makes it 1154. You'll see that right in the cell when you look at the electronic version.
Okay.
And so where we are right now is back up to $11.50 based on the latest assessed numbers that I've gotten from the Real Property Services Office. The reason there's a difference in those numbers is we've had a judgment settled regarding Georgia Pacific. It's going to take about $3.8 million out of the assessed value, and another small one for roughly $40,000 for a small award that was just given. They're already counting those in. They still have to get those awards and make sure that they're final so that they can post the numbers, but that's what they're telling me the numbers are going to be, provided there's no other changes by December 31st.
So our total assessed value will drop from 999,999.5 to 995.6. Is that what you're saying,
Absolutely.
Mr. Martin? So
Yep.
because of the settlement with GP, then that's the difference?
Yes, mostly. It's
Okay.
3.8 million on that settlement, and there's 40,000 on another one.
And
So
then those numbers below are the tax rate per thousand?
that's correct.
Okay.
So as we do this, it's like a big equation, you know, the revenues versus the expenses.
Sure.
The plug-in is what the real property tax requirement will be to keep it balanced.
Okay.
Okay.
And somewhere there's a copy of this in Excel, correct? And we can have this?
Absolutely, I sent it to the mayor this Yeah, afternoon. We can send it
Will
out.
you distribute it to us, please?
That's based on what you and Councilor Moore asked to have done yesterday. It was the easiest way for me to put together what's changed, because when we had the discussion last Saturday morning, Councilor Barbell suggested that we deal with both sets of mayor's numbers, the mayor's budget from June and the mayor's budget from October. Consider both of those with what we're doing to roll it forward. So the easiest way to look at this is, here's your start, here's your revision, and here's what we're going to. I couldn't think of a better way to put it together than to give you all three sets of numbers.
Okay, so, there was some, can we just look at the police department real quickly here? Okay, I see where the mayor's budget called for, the revised mayor's budget called for a $2.7 million payroll, at 2.8 close to that, and then the council budget calls for a $3.1 million increase in payroll.
Yep.
Or total payroll.
Yeah,
not
those
increase.
were the same numbers we were discussing this past Monday
Yeah,
and also
yeah. Okay.
last Saturday.
Okay, well, I think that helps clear it up for us. Thank you very much.
So unfortunately, you have to go line by line, but if you look across all three lines, you'll see the progression, where we're coming from, going to. And it's only the things that have been discussed is what I've changed. I've left everything else alone at this point.
Thank you.
Any other committee reports?
Yes, Mayor, just one quick additional budget item I'd like for the council to think about over the weekend as we prepare for our Monday workshop. That is to go back and read the revised budgets, budget narrative, that's page 1 and 2 of the entire package. I hope everyone has it. I'm sorry, it's pages 1, 2, 3, and 4. So those are the first 4 pages of the mayor's budget released in October. It's a really good narrative, and I would ask that each of you read that, and then we're going to make some changes to the budget. So I would ask you also to think then, what is your budget narrative? How does your proposed changes change the mayor's budget narrative? So I'd like to hear your own budget narrative as we proceed. So please go through that exercise over the weekend to prepare you for Monday, and then we can have some lively discussion about what to do and what not to do when it comes to changes in the mayor's budget.
Any further reports? I just had information, you know, the SUNY Plattsburgh tested about 1,400 students in the last couple of days as they prepare to go back home under the provision that he didn't want to send any ill students back home. And the results have been in. I think they recorded 0 new cases from the SUNY Plattsburgh students, which really I just don't want anybody to become complacent believing this is really just a SUNY problem. And I also want to applaud the great work that the public schools have been doing in this. The belief of the experts is students who are getting infected are not getting infected at school. They're getting infected driving home in that car that you talked about with 5 other students, none of them wearing a mask and going to gatherings on the weekend, et cetera. The school's been doing a tremendous job in keeping our students safe. So just a little bit more news since I reported earlier today. If there's no other new business or council reports, I'd like to open up to the public for comments of mutual interest of any sort.
Thank you. Mayor and councilors, I'm basing my comments on what I have observed by watching the council meetings. I have not been able to attend your budget meetings this weekend, Monday and Monday. So they're just kind of reflections on the process. Some of my information may not be entirely up to date, but here goes. While I am relieved that the majority of councilors have not shown support for the revised 2021 budget that aimed to reduce taxes over 14%, I remain concerned about the principles underlying some councilors' push for cuts. Thank you to the councilors who have determined that a huge tax cut at this time is neither needed nor realistic. I will need to be convinced that setting the goal of a 5% tax cut over the next 3 years is necessary, and so I look forward to your discussions about the matter. I have no doubt that each counselor has a desire to make fiscally responsible decisions. However, those decisions must make sense in terms of how the city can carry out its operations and deliver services that make Plattsburgh a livable community. Please find a balance between these two concerns. I have some general suggestions to guide your decision-making based on my experience with budgets and city operations. First, please do not institute cuts that are the result of reorganization without fully vetting their operational impact. Councilor Gibbs rightfully questioned both the logic and planning behind recent plans to restructure community development, finance, public safety, and recreation. Maybe that's not all of them. Carefully examine unforeseen consequences to ensure that work will be covered properly. Avoid unwarranted reductions in services. Many councilors, past and present, as well as city personnel, agree that the restructuring done in 2017 left gaps in operations that have yet to be fully rectified. Staff should be your best source of input regarding how services will be rendered or whether services should be discontinued. Demand that organizational flowcharts be provided when staff changes are proposed. Make sure that civil service requirements are in place. Regrettably, in 2017, many organizational changes were approved before these details had been pinned down, resulting in ad hoc adjustments and more than a little administrative improvisation. In my view, lack of adequate planning led to almost a year of scrambling to cover all bases, while DPW, in particular, bore the brunt of adjustment to workload changes and the unintended consequences of restructuring. Given this history, I hope you are persuaded to steer clear of radical structural changes to city operations. While there are indications that eliminating community development is no longer on the table, I'd like to emphasize my support for this office. Campaigning in 2013, the slate of Democrats who eventually took office in 2014 had unanimously pushed for the reinstatement of the Community Development Office that had been disbanded in 2007, arguing that the elimination of this department had deprived the city of a means of planning for economic development and skin in the grants game. We were successful in our appeal. You know the history. Matt Miller's comprehensive report of this department's activity should be proof enough to retain the department and his leadership of it. If that's not enough, please keep in mind my general cautions about reorganization outlined above. At the new November 12th meeting, Councilor Kelly expressed the need for many future infrastructure projects, including those for the beach and our parks. Retain community development and Director Miller, and we have a better chance of developing coherent plans for these assets. The points I offer are specific parts of a more general recommendation, and that is, do not make 11th hour changes to government operations that the new administration will have to deal with. And certainly do not yield to the pressure to approve a budget until you are fully satisfied that proper research has been done.
Counselor,
Please
one at a
distrust the
time.
notion that radical changes must be made and that the budget must be approved before some arbitrary date.
Thank you. Mayor-elect Rosenquist?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Chris Rosenquist, I have been in conversation with many of you. I've seen the budget process that you all are going through, and I appreciate the effort that you are putting forth to securing a sound quality budget. So I want to acknowledge you for that. It is a difficult process inherently. But as you know, and as you have all recognized, the depth of the cut previously proposed would not be sustainable for the future of our community. So I do appreciate Councilor Kelly coming back to the table with at least a 3-year proposal for a cut. I would like to see continued that work. You all continue that work, and I sincerely appreciate the difficult conversations that you are all having surrounding our budget. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals like to please come address the council with any issue of mutual concern? You see if there's anybody else outside that'd like to come and speak with us? None? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor McFarland. Roll call.
Council Barbell?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Brody?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.